Okay, can you just start off by telling me your name?
My name is Ebon Brooks-Lane.
Okay, and when did you attend IUP?
I attended IUP from 2011 to 2015.
Okay, and what was your major?
Communications media.
Okay. Are you using that now, or are you working in communications?
Right now, I'm actually taking a break from the industry so I can get more prepared for it. I was on the set of a movie not too long ago in April, so I'm just getting myself more prepared so I can do more things in my field. So I'm saving up money and stuff because with the field, being a production assistant, which is the lower level of the lowest level of being a producer or a director or what have you, is you start off with being a production assistant. So right now I'm just currently just getting myself together for that.
Yeah, that sounds exciting though. That's a big move in life to be on a movie set.
Yeah, it was really amazing. I met some legendary people. I met Dee Wallace, who played the mother in E.T. and the mother in Cujo. So that was a great experience. And I actually got to see the face behind the mask of Jason Voorhees.
Oh, cool.
So it was really interesting.
That's cool. Okay. Well, where were you born and what year?
I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1992.
Okay. And did you grow up in Philadelphia then?
Yes, I grew up in the city until I was 11, and then I moved to the suburban area where I'm currently living when I was 11. So I came here when I was 11, and I'm still here.
What was that like for you? Was it a big difference moving from the city to the suburbs?
It was quite a difference. I did adjust well, but it was definitely a big difference. In the city, you have kids and people around all the time. There's never anyone not out of their house on their steps or their porch. Then in the suburbs, it's different, and people don't really come out and just hang around the streets and stuff. So that was an adjustment, but overall, it was quite the adjustment. I do have to say, middle school, I would say my middle school and high school year was quite different.
Mm. What was different about that? What made that different?
It was just more so, I experienced being bullied at that time, so I had some traumatic experiences from that during that time period. Well, mostly middle school. That was the big adjustment because I really didn't experience those things when I was younger. So when I was in elementary, I really didn't experience those things. It may have more so to do that I was in private school at that time, and then I switched into public school. So that was probably a big difference because there wasn't as many eyes on kids as there was in private school.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember if at any point in that time when you kind of became aware that there were, different races or that, people were all made differently? Do you remember a time that you started to realize that?
Yes, actually, yes, I do. When I came over into the suburb area, it was as diverse as my elementary, whereas my elementary it was a mix of black, white, and Hispanic, whereas here it was black, white, Hispanic, and Asian, and Jewish, and it was more Indian. It was more diversity, and I wasn't so much. I was aware of it, but I would say I wasn't really conscious of it until I got into high school, and we became, when you're a little older, you become more aware that okay, the black kids get treated a little bit differently than the white kids, but. And then also just me being as younger, I am gay. So back then that was more so the problems I experienced more so than race until I became more aware of how institutionally, that white kids get favored a little bit more in honor classes and stuff of that nature than minority kids.
Was there ever a time that you, like, spoke out against that or brought it to anyone's attention?
I really didn't. At that time, I wasn't so much vocal about those types of things with race or any other issue. I was more passive and whatnot until I didn't become more outspoken against those things until now, until I was in college.
Yeah.
That's when I became more outspoken, because in high school I just felt uncomfortable, like basically having conviction in your beliefs. I was a little bit more passive with that.
So do you think that going to IUP helped you to gain that kind of conviction and gain that voice?
Yes, I actually do, because I think in IUP I became more aware of just racial inequality. I became more aware of it. Like, being black, I was always taught about it, but I wasn't really aware of it. I just thought of it, okay, so racism happened like 50 years ago, and we still deal with it now, but it's not as bad. Until I came to IUP, and my freshman year, I was on the Punxsutawney campus, and there was just it was just uncomfortable being in that town, and I really didn't experience anything too outwardly blatantly racist. It was just the feeling of sometimes you'll come across like different people who you could just tell they were very unwelcoming of African Americans or any other minority for that matter. I remember one time we walked into a bar and restaurant to get money out of an ATM, and we were just given the dirtiest looks and glared at. I never felt so unwelcomed before, so that's when I became more aware of, like, okay, so racism is still very prevalent. It's not just something that happens here and there. It's still very prevalent.
Right. Yeah, it's hard in Punxsutawney with a very, very predominantly white community. And I know that recently it's been becoming more noticeable that they've been sending minorities over to Punxsutawney more frequently. Do you think that plays a role in the way that students were being treated by residents of Punxsutawney?
I think so too. I do think that is a factor. I think the residents of Punxsutawney they never really got to experience African Americans, so based on they already have a bias, they don't know how to take us. And there's other people that you can come across in Punxsutawney who are kind of okay, but I would think that the majority of Punxsutawney, if you're African American or Latino or maybe even Asian, you may have a harder time feeling comfortable and more adjusted there than someone who's Caucasian.
Do you feel like that changed a little when you went to Indiana, or do you think that, like, you were kind of treated the same from town to town?
In Indiana, I have to say it was a big difference. For me personally, I do know for other people, they still experience some instances of racism, whereas I didn't experience it more so. I kind of stayed more, and I think it could have been more because I became more aware of the racial tension in Western PA and from Punxsutawney. So I was like, okay, I'll stick within the black community, and I come from a diverse community, so I still made diverse friends. There was just certain parties that I did not go to because of the reputation that they had. And amongst the black community, like, I knew there was like certain frats that weren't so welcoming to African Americans. So when I heard about this, and then just other instances, other parties where there was the predominantly Caucasian students, I just stayed away from them just because I didn't want to experience those type of things, you know?
Right. That's horrible to hear, to have to, avoid certain situations out of not fear, but out of, like, not wanting to have a confrontation. So I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. So you went
Yeah.
to IUP when the incident happened with the Snapchat in the library. And obviously people were outraged, and rightfully so. And in response to that, and after much pressure from everyone, President Driscoll made attempts at like diversity and inclusion forums. Do you think that he did enough to try to combat the issue with racism?
I really don't believe so. I don't believe so. From what I was told, because after I graduated and stuff, I still had, my friends, especially actually a few people that I know that I was friends with and hung out with, they were in that Snapchat picture. And when I found out about it, I found out that the student who took the Snapchat picture, she wasn't really disciplined at all. And I feel like they were just like, there was a quick little discussion about it, and it got swept over the rug. And I don't think that's really the most effective way to deal with the racial tension and inequality that occurs, especially on the campus. I don't think it was really effective. I think that there should be some sort of maybe mandatory class as far as someone has to take maybe a sociology class or something, maybe not exactly that, it just should be something so that students become aware that you are now in the real world and there are people that are different from you, and you have to be accepting of those who are different from you. And I think that dialogue, there was a chance for that dialogue to occur, and I think it was a failure on their part for not being able to, or not effectively trying to bring together those communities, because the black and the white communities are pretty separate from each other. And although it is hard to integrate those two entities, I just don't think there wasn't enough effort to even attempt for that to happen.
I completely agree with you. I heard you mention about maybe taking a mandatory social class, which I totally agree with, given that I'm a social major.
Yeah.
Did you take many social classes while you were at school?
Yeah, I minored in sociology, so I had a few. I'd consider, like, I love my field. I love my major. I loved it. But I think my best teachers came from sociology department. I think I had from Dr. Hildebrand to Dr. Heisbach, and my other professors. They were just amazing.
Was there any particular course that you liked the best in sociology?
Let's see. I really loved our race and I forget the exact name of it, but our race and ethnicity course with Dr. Hildebrand. I really loved that one, and I loved the sexuality class that I took with Dr. I don't know why I didn't, because he's one of my favorites, but his name is just missing my tongue right now because I'm tired. But he was just an amazing professor, just amazing. And they both were very informative, and I love that they were very passionate about their studies. I really loved their course.
Do you think classes like that help prepare you for the future? And I mean, in general, do you think that IUP's courses and classes helped you to become established in the real world?
In general, I would say in the field of communications media, in my major, I would say so much. There's more so once there was just certain things that could have been made better to help us to get our landing into the internships that we were going for and desired and stuff of that nature. If, like, for instance, the information about we had to take a class before our internship, we even take an internship wasn't even told to me until I think my junior year. It was the spring of my junior year when I was starting to apply for it. internships, and many other students that I know experienced the same thing. And for me, I had switched over. I changed my major my freshman year from journalism to communications media, and that was never expressed to me.
Oh, wow.
So at the last minute, I really found out. So I did end up getting an internship, but it wasn't my dream internship, and it didn't really have the connections that are really needed to help get the wheels moving into the industry. So you kind of are left to find your own way after graduation.
All right. So besides just classes, were you in any other clubs, sports, or activities at IUP?
Yes. I was on IUP TV from sophomore year to senior year. At one point, I was in IUP radio. I was in Poise modeling troupe for the sophomore year until senior year. There was some other things that at some point I was just kind of bouncing around, and I did like different stuff here and there. At one moment, I was working with DEC for a quick moment. It was just I like to stay active, so I was kind of like in a little bit of everything. Like I had the main things I was in, but I kind of dabbled in everything.
Yeah, it sounds like you were definitely very busy at your time out there. How did you find time to hang out with your friends?
Well, there would be times where I wouldn't see them for maybe like a week, and especially senior year, there was one time I basically didn't see them for a month. That was the craziest time. Like, I didn't see them at all. But most of the time, I wouldn't get to see my friends until the weekend, or if I did see them during the weekday, it was at lunch, and then I had to get up and go, and I'm like, okay, guys, I'll see you later. And then there were some times where I was able to, like, spend a few hours with them, like, during the week, because maybe I got some work done out of the way, or I didn't have a meeting that day. So sometimes things worked out so I could meet them during the week. But most of the time, I didn't really get to see them until, like, Friday and Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, okay. So what were your expectations before starting school at IUP, and did you find that these expectations were correct?
I really didn't have any expectations. I think the only expectation that I really expect to get was, well, actually, yeah, I did have expectations. I'm sorry, I'm lying. I did have expectations. But as far as getting into my major and stuff, I really expected to be able to get my internship. And I think that was the biggest disappointment out of everything, because I loved Ivy, still do, but that was the major disappointment, because the communication field, there was just a failure with getting that transition into our internships and making sure that the deadlines were completely set, and deadlines were set so that they were convenient for the students. We had I think for our internship paperwork, our deadline was during spring break when most students are back at home. It just made no sense. So I had to, I did get an interview with 6ABC, but I had to turn the interview down and take another internship opportunity because of the deadline. And then they ended up extending the deadline after I made all these decisions.
Oh, geez. That's very unfortunate. And again, I'm sorry to hear that. Other than that, did you feel like you struggled with any professors or anything in particular? Or did you ever feel like you were being discriminated against by professors?
No, fortunately, I never experienced that, but I do know of students who did experience that, who did, like, I can tell the story, but I don't remember the name. I don't even remember the friend. I just remember that this story, it just baffled me. Someone told me one time that, like, one of the professors, like, she said that she used like the dictionary, whatever, to be able to form, like, have better verbiage in her essay. And then her professor told her, well, this isn't your language or something along those lines, or this isn't how you speak. And she felt offended because she felt as though, like, that it was more than just, oh, I don't write my papers like this. She said she felt that it had to do with race and stuff, especially because of where she comes from. Like, if you're African American and you come from Durban City, you speak in slang, or you have the accent of slang. So she just felt that she was being discriminated against because of that.
Do you feel like you've ever had to, like you said, speak in a different way to make white people more comfortable? Or do you feel like when you speak however you want, that white people kind of question why you're speaking that way?
Yes, definitely. And definitely, I was just talking to someone about this, like it's your accent. It's like we have to change our accent. Like, African Americans, we do have like this southern like twang to our accents and stuff, but when you get around like majority like white people, or you're talking to an older white person, a lot of times you feel like you have to change the way you talk so you can not seem ghetto or whatever else that they think about us. So that's how we always have to end up changing our voices. Like, even at work, like, sometimes, like, I've actually stopped. It's actually a habit that I've been working on, because I just want to be more authentic, and even if it's faced with certain discriminations or biases, I just want to be me. So, there'll be times where I, like, go and talk to, like, my manager, and I notice I'm changing the way I talk. And I'm like, I don't like doing that, but it's because we're so conditioned into that is a survival instinct, and that's what we have to do to survive. That's what we do. Because, like, ever since we were kids, like, we witnessed, like, our parents when they were talking to, like, a white person or their boss, or a telemarketer calls or something, and it's a white person, then their voice changes and they sound more white. Because between African Americans, I know people are like, there's no such thing as sounding black or sounding white, but there is, because we have cultural differences. Mm-hmm. And I think we are forced to assimilate to white culture because it is the more predominant culture, and we are still oppressed by the predominantly white institution.
Besides language, what other parts of you do you feel like you sometimes have to conceal in order to be accepted by white people?
Outside of the way I talk, I don't know. I don't really think so. I think it's just the way, for me personally, it's just the way I talk. Mm-hmm. Like, it'll change. Like, and I'll be honest, I just realized that once you brought it up, that even talking with you, my accent kind of changed a little bit. So, mm-hmm. Like, it's something that, like, I'm working on, because, like, I don't like the fact that we have to do that, or we feel that we have to do that. And, like, it's just our conditioning that's what we have to do. It's really unfortunate.
Right, and you're right, you shouldn't have to do that, but unfortunately, there are many people who, are against the way that others speak, or want someone to speak properly or to their standards. So that's definitely something that could be fixed in not even just IUP, but America as a whole.
Right. I will say the only benefit from it is that you do get to use the vocabulary words that you use in, like, school. Mm-hmm. Like, because you're like, when am I ever going to use this? But when you, like, meet white people, you're like, okay, I can use this word. With African Americans, we don't use, like, those big vocabulary words and stuff. We talk, like, very, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just very, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. We just don't use those type of words.
Right. So overall, how would you say that your experience was at IUP?
I loved it. It was like the best experience of my life. It helped me a lot to be more vocal about my rights as a black man, as a gay man, as a millennial, because I feel like even millennials, we're faced with ageism, discrimination, and it helped me a lot. I would say the sociology department definitely helped me a lot to be able to communicate my rights and to stand up more for myself in the workforce and even in my personal life.
That's awesome. What advice would you give to a new student coming into IUP?
My advice would be that, depending on where they come from, because most of the time I find that city kids have the hardest time transitioning. And my advice would just be to just remember what you're there for and to just make the best of your situation. You may be far away from home. It may be a culture shock, but it's a learning experience. College is not just about textbooks and going to class and dealing with professors. It's about growing and learning as a person. And don't be afraid to step outside the black community and make friends with white people, Asian people, or anyone for that matter. I would even say for straight people too, don't be afraid to make friends with people that are gay, or if you're a Christian, don't be afraid to make friends with someone who has a different belief than you. I think, definitely in college it's the opportunity it's the groundwork for the real world. And if we don't learn how to accept people in college or become aware of diversity and just the true concept of diversity, I think you miss that out. You miss out on that when you become an alumni of IUP. So it's definitely important to branch out and keep an open mind and get to know people that are different from you.
I definitely agree. What about, say there's a student that's white that lived in a very, very sheltered kind of town and wasn't really experiencing anything different from themselves. What would you tell them to do to make themselves more aware and open-minded?
Meet you some black friends. Get some black friends. Just communicate. And you don't even have to be the closest friends with them. You can just, a person in class, you just sit and talk to them. And you will find that, okay, this person is different from what I've been taught, or what I haven't even been taught, or what I've always assumed about African Americans. This person is a little different, or okay, some things rings true, but this person is an individual outside of those stereotypes. Because I think stereotypes, they can be very harmful, but there is a little truth to everything. There is a little truth, just because it's culturally. I think the problem with a stereotype is when it becomes made to, as a stereotype is, to generalize just a group of people on negative things. But I think some things do ring true, and I do think that if you get to know people, you can distinguish that, okay, this is an individual outside of their culture, and I can embrace their culture, and I get to know more about them. Because I think a lot of times just a person that's white from like a small town just doesn't know anything about black people. Like, I remember when I made some white friends at IUP who never seen black people before, they were like, oh, can I touch your hair? Like, what does it feel like? And then they would make comments like, oh, it's so harsh, like it feels like carpet. And like, at first I got offended, but then when I realized, I'm like, they just never been exposed to African Americans this up close and personal. Because there's a difference between seeing and actually interacting.
Right. So what do you think the next step should be for IUP's faculty in, making IUP the best place that it can be, especially in terms of race and equality?
Wow. There's so many things. Where should I begin?
Take your time.
I'll just condense it. I think that I think there needs to be a focus on the African American community to have to just feel more included. I think the African American community doesn't really feel that included. They just feel like they go to the school, but they don't really feel that included. I think a lot of students feel that way. And I also think that that's where it begins, because then African American kids will, you know, be able to communicate more, trust their professors more to communicate their issues or things that they experience in class, because sometimes racism happens in class. Like, I just forgot about this, or just out in general, I completely forgot about this, but I saw blackface at that IUP during Halloween one year, and that took me back a lot. I called my parents and told them, and I was really shocked. But it's those type of things, and I don't even think those people did it to be malicious, because they dressed up as Ed from Good Burger, and I don't think they thought it was malicious. They thought they were just dressing up in costumes, but they don't understand the stipulations with blackface and all those type of things. So I think those communities just need to come together somehow. They need to have a program or implement something into curriculum to bring the community together so they can learn about each other's history and stuff. So then white kids and black kids can feel comfortable with each other, and white kids can understand why we have to have things like Black Lives Matter and stuff of that nature.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think then that empathy is a huge thing that needs to be taught more in college campuses?
Definite. Well, I would say that I don't think you can really teach someone how to empathize. I think a person has to be willing to. So that's I feel like that's tricky, because some people are just so stuck to dogma, things they've been taught, that they don't want to empathize with other people. But I think you can open the conversation and present facts and present the truth. And there are going to be people who will empathize, people who will seek to understand more, and then there'll be other people who will just be completely just like, I don't want anything to do with this, just this, that, and the third, and that's the most that conversation will go for them. But I do think that most humans have empathy. So I do think it would still be successful either way.
So for the people who are just completely unwilling, do you think that we should just kind of write them off or minimize what they're saying?
As far as like how I feel just now with the race, and I won't even just say racism, it's just with any type of discrimination and bias and bigots. I just think it's just time for us to just not focus on them. I think we need to focus more on our allies, more on our goal, and we have to remove bigoted people from office and from positions of power, and put people in charge and put people in control and put people in positions of influence that can change the tide of the racial inequality, because those people are never going to go away. They just can't have any power.
Right, I agree. Well, that about wraps up my questions for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share about your time at IUP?
That's everything.
Okay, well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for helping us out with this. And then you'll be receiving a copy of this, and then your recording will be around for many generations to come.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We'll be in touch within the next couple of weeks to let you know how everything's coming along.
Okay, thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.